Hey guys, tonight we stand at the threshold of something colossal. You trudge into Everest Base Camp, your boots crunching on gravel and ice chips like impatient applause beneath a roaring silence. As you crane your neck toward towering ice walls that glint like fractured diamonds, you probably won't survive. This feels less like a warning and more like a dare you can't resist. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments so we can see who's joining from where. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step from the yak dung smoke of the mess tent into a world that feels both ancient and electric. Tented clusters dot the rocky plain like colorful mushrooms sprung from the moraine. Each one shelters cities of triumph and tragedy, whispered among climbers, nursing frost nipped fingers and adrenaline fueled hearts. The Khumbu Glacier sprawls nearby, a frozen river carved into grotesque sculptures of Yika ice called siracs, their overhanging shapes promising beauty and murder in a single crack. Camp cooks ladle steaming dalbat into battered bowls, and you follow the scent until you join a half dozen climbers raising spoons in convivial greeting despite pinched cheeks and damp clothing. Your pack settles onto your shoulders once more, and you wander toward the foot of Lobuche and Amadablam, names that roll off tongues like ancient invocations. The peak's shadow stretches across the camp, a dark finger pointing toward the sky, reminding you that here you are both insignificant and boundless. Ice pickup trucks lumber in with supplies, their engine groans swallowed by the thin air. You pause at a patch of sunlit snow and squat down, letting the crystalline cold bite through your gloves, grounding you in the reality that this is no safari. This is war against altitude, weather, and your own limits. Climbing guides shout instructions in Tibetan accented English. Check your lines. Fix your ropes. Their voices slice through the ambient chatter. You methodically inspect harness straps, carabiners, and pressure points on your boots. A sense of ritual steadies you, forging a fragile calm as storm clouds gather on the distant horizon. Every breath is a small victory, each heartbeat a drumbeat echoing across the Himalaya. Others circle you, exchanging exuberant grins and fist bumps. You laugh when someone offers herbal tea brewed with yak butter, too buttery, too rich, but you sip anyway, grateful for warmth against wind's insistence. Overhead, a plane load of gear descends on a rope harness, and you feel a collective thrill. This is the front line of your ambition, the place where you traded safety for the promise of a story worth surviving to tell. As dusk seeps into the peaks, you linger at the edge of camp, tracing the silhouette of Everest itself against a bruised sky. The mountain seems to breathe its ridges, alive with shifting snow and shadow. Somewhere in that labyrinth of ice and rock lies your goal and your undoing. Yet for now you stand grounded in community and purpose, every nervous laugh and shiver a testament to the journey's beginning. You stand at the edge of camp, heart still thrumming from the evening's excitement, when the mountain whispers its first cruel reminder: altitude doesn't negotiate. As you inhale, your lungs strain against a vacuum, you didn't know existed. Each breath feels shallower than the last, as if invisible hands clamp around your rib cage. The sun dips behind a ridge, and the temperature plummets, but your skin burns from exertion and lack of oxygen. A dull throb blooms behind your eyes, pulsing in time with your heartbeat. You press a gloved hand against your temples, trying to massage away the pressure. Instead, the pounding intensifies, like Tibetan drums echoing through your skull. You stagger toward your tent, footsteps uneven on the rocky moraine, and fling yourself onto your sleeping pad. The flimsy barrier between you and the icy ground feels simultaneously comforting and absurdly inadequate. Your stomach knots, and you swallow bile toward your lungs. You close your eyes, willing nausea away, but it seizes you like a wild animal pulling you under. You roll to your side, fingers clutching the edge of your sleeping bag, damp with condensation and nerves. Somewhere outside, a fellow climber retches into the darkness, the sound both terrifying and strangely reassuring, a reminder you're not alone in this battleground. You force yourself upright and zip open the tent. Fragments of the camp's glow spill in flickering lanterns, balanced on rocks, distant headlamps, bobbing like fireflies on the Khumbu Icefall Trail. A cold, biting wind gusts through the vestibule, carrying with it the scent of kerosene and hope. You wrap your arms around yourself, rocking gently as though coaxing a frightened child. In your mind's eye, you replay the cook's grin as she ladled dal bhat into your bowl too buttery. Then now, a flicker of warmth, you ache to taste again, gasping. You remember the advice your guide gave: drink, eat, breathe slow. You fumble for your water bladder and gulp lukewarm water that tastes faintly of plastic and dust. You force down a few spoonfuls of dried noodles, choking at each bite, but clinging to the tiny calories as if they'll anchor you. Your fingers tremble, and you deliberately unwrap one of those herbal yak butter tea bags. You cradle the nylon bag like a precious relic, pouring hot water over it. The buttery scent rises in comforting swirls. You sip, wincing, as the richness settles hot in your belly, a fragile oasis in this desolate temple of ice. As the tea's warmth radiates through you, your headache dulls to a nagging throb. Your breathing slows from panicked gasps to measured inhales, each one a small concession from the mountain. You press a fist to your chest and count each breath. One, air rushes in; two, hold; three, release. You repeat until numbers blur your heartbeat, easing into a steadier rhythm. Restless, you uncoil from your bag and peer through the tent flap. The crescent moon peers between jagged peaks, its pale light illuminating a world of blue shadows and dazzling white ridges. Prayer flags flap overhead in the silence, sending mantra-laced prayers into the void. You step out, boots crunching, and trail a gloved hand along the flag's tattered edges. You whisper your own prayer, an urgent plea to your body to adapt, to let you stay in this frozen cathedral a while longer. Your guide's words echo altitude. Sickness doesn't wait for you to feel better. You shove that thought aside and focus on small victories. Your water bladder is half full, your stomach no longer twists, and you can stand upright without doubling over. You set your eyes on a distant ridge, bathed in silver wonder mingling with fear. That same ridge loomed over base camp, and now it seems to expand and contract with each breath you take. You return to your tent and dig into your pack for ibuprofen. The pills rattle against plastic tiny cannonballs against your pain. You swallow one dry, then chase it with more water. The medicine settles like a promise in your gut. You lie back down and close your eyes, but sleep is elusive. Instead, you drift between half dreams and half reality images of ice walls morphing into faces, frozen winds, whispering warnings, and the taste of yak butter tea turning bittersweet. Somewhere before midnight, your breathing steadies, and exhaustion, the deep, relentless exhaustion that only high altitude can deliver, finally pulls you under. You float in a haze of dreams where you're both weightless and tethered to the earth by invisible cords. In one dream, you're climbing a ladder across a yawning crevasse. In another, you're running backward on a treadmill that makes you dizzy. Each scenario ends with you gasping, waking to the cold tent air, and realizing you're still here, still fighting. When dawn's pale light seeps through the tent fabric, you wake stiff and strangely exhilarated. Your headache lingers, but is no longer a raging beast, just a weary sentinel reminding you of last night's battle. Your stomach grumbles, and you unzip the tent to inhale frigid air that tastes like promise. Around you, climbers stir some rubbing temples, others sipping tea. A fellow climber catches your eye and offers a half smile, mutual recognition of shared suffering and small victory. You stand unsteady, but upright, feeling the world tilt and shift under your feet. Your pack feels heavier, but you sling it on anyway. You're determined to join the acclimatization hike to Camp 1 this morning. Every step remains a negotiation between mind and body, but you remind yourself progress is built on tiny conquests, like drinking tea when you wanted to vomit, or standing straight when you felt like collapsing. As you trudge toward the sunrise-hued ridgeline, the mountain's enormity presses down, not just physically, but mentally. Yet this first taste of altitude headache, nausea, breathlessness is also your initiation rite. You realize that to survive Everest, you'll learn to embrace discomfort, to find calm in chaos, and to celebrate each reclaimed breath. The sun breaks over a ridge beyond camp, casting a rosy glow on powdered slopes. You pause, hands on knees, breathing deep despite the sting. The world feels fragile and infinite all at once. You lift your head and whisper a promise: I will adapt. I will endure. Then, with trembling resolve, you press forward into the thinning air, ready to earn your place on this mountain. You stand at the edge of camp, heart still thrumming from the evening's excitement, when the mountain whispers its first cruel reminder: altitude doesn't negotiate. As you inhale, your lungs strain against a vacuum you didn't know existed. Each breath feels shallower than the last, as if invisible hands clamp around your rib cage. The sun dips behind a ridge, and the temperature plummets, but your skin burns from exertion and lack of oxygen. A dull throb blooms behind your eyes, pulsing in time with your heartbeat. You press a gloved hand against your temples, trying to massage away the pressure. Instead, the pounding intensifies, like Tibetan drums echoing through your skull. You stagger toward your tent, footsteps uneven on the rocky moraine, and fling yourself onto your sleeping pad. The flimsy barrier between you and the icy ground feels simultaneously comforting and absurdly inadequate. Your stomach knots, and you swallow bile toward your lungs. You close your eyes, willing nausea away, but it seizes you like a wild animal pulling you under. You roll to your side, fingers clutching the edge of your sleeping bag, damp with condensation and nerves. Somewhere outside, a fellow climber retches into the darkness, the sound both terrifying and strangely reassuring, a reminder you're not alone in this battleground. You force yourself upright and zip open the tent. Fragments of the camp's glow spill in flickering lanterns balanced on rocks. Distant headlamps bobbing like fireflies on the Khumbu Icefall Trail. A cold, biting wind gusts through the vestibule, carrying with it the scent of kerosene and hope. You wrap your arms around yourself, rocking gently as though coaxing a frightened child. In your mind's eye, you replay the cook's grin as she ladled dal bhat into your bowl too buttery, then now a flicker of warmth you ache to taste again, gasping. You remember the advice your guide gave: drink, eat, breathe slow. You fumble for your water bladder and gulp lukewarm water that tastes faintly of plastic and dust. You force down a few spoonfuls of dried noodles, choking at each bite, but clinging to the tiny calories as if they'll anchor you. Your fingers tremble, and you deliberately unwrap one of those herbal yak butter tea bags. You cradle the nylon bag like a precious relic, pouring hot water over it. The buttery scent rises in comforting swirls. You sip, wincing, as the richness settles hot in your belly, a fragile oasis in this desolate temple of ice. As the tea's warmth radiates through you, your headache dulls to a nagging throb. Your breathing slows from panicked gasps to measured inhales, each one a small concession from the mountain. You press a fist to your chest and count each breath. One, air rushes in; two, hold; three, release. You repeat until numbers blur your heartbeat, easing into a steadier rhythm. Restless, you uncoil from your bag and peer through the tent flap. The crescent moon peers between jagged peaks, its pale light illuminating a world of blue shadows and dazzling white ridges. Prayer flags flap overhead in the silence, sending mantra-laced prayers into the void. You step out, boots crunching, and trail a gloved hand along the flag's tattered edges. You whisper your own prayer, an urgent plea to your body to adapt, to let you stay in this frozen cathedral a while longer. Your guide's words echo altitude. Sickness doesn't wait for you to feel better. You shove that thought aside and focus on small victories. Your water bladder is half full, your stomach no longer twists, and you can stand upright without doubling over. You set your eyes on a distant ridge, bathed in silver wonder, mingling with fear. That same ridge loomed over base camp, and now it seems to expand and contract with each breath you take. You return to your tent and dig into your pack for ibuprofen. The pills rattle against plastic tiny cannonballs against your pain. You swallow one dry, then chase it with more water. The medicine settles like a promise in your gut. You lie back down and close your eyes, but sleep is elusive. Instead, you drift between half dreams and half reality images of ice walls morphing into faces, frozen winds, whispering warnings, and the taste of yak butter tea turning bittersweet. Somewhere before midnight, your breathing steadies, and exhaustion, the deep, relentless exhaustion that only high altitude can deliver, finally pulls you under. You float in a haze of dreams where you're both weightless and tethered to the earth by invisible cords. In one dream, you're climbing a ladder across a yawning crevasse. In another, you're running backward on a treadmill that makes you dizzy. Each scenario ends with you gasping, waking to the cold tent air, and realizing you're still here, still fighting. When dawn's pale light seeps through the tent fabric, you wake stiff and strangely exhilarated. Your headache lingers, but is no longer a raging beast, just a weary sentinel reminding you of last night's battle. Your stomach grumbles, and you unzip the tent to inhale frigid air that tastes like promise. Around you, climbers stir some rubbing temples, others sipping tea. A fellow climber catches your eye and offers a half smile, mutual recognition of shared suffering and small victory. You stand unsteady, but upright, feeling the world tilt and shift under your feet. Your pack feels heavier, but you sling it on anyway. You're determined to join the acclimatization hike to Camp 1 this morning. Every step remains a negotiation between mind and body, but you remind yourself progress is built on tiny conquests, like drinking tea when you wanted to vomit, or standing straight when you felt like collapsing. As you trudge toward the sunrise-hued ridgeline, the mountain's enormity presses down, not just physically, but mentally. Yet this first taste of altitude headache, nausea, breathlessness, is also your initiation rite. You realize that to survive Everest, you'll learn to embrace discomfort, to find calm in chaos, and to celebrate each reclaimed breath. The sun breaks over a ridge beyond camp, casting a rosy glow on powdered slopes. You pause, hands on knees, breathing deep despite the sting. The world feels fragile and infinite all at once. You lift your head and whisper a promise: I will adapt. I will endure. Then, with trembling resolve, you press forward into the thinning air, ready to earn your place on this mountain. You arrive at the rocky plateau of Camp 1. As the sun climbs higher, its rays melting frost into tiny rivulets that thread around tent stakes. Your legs burn from yesterday's hike, but relief washes over you as you spot the vivid sprawl of nylon shelters pitched in neat rows like a multicolored village. Ahead, a guide waves you toward an empty plot beside a pair of French alpinists trading banter in rapid French. Shouldering your pack, you squat and hammer in your tent's pegs with deliberate patience, each strike a small victory against the mountain's indifferent forces. The ground resists a mosaic of gravel and hidden stones, but you find purchase. You unzip the tent fabric and shake it out, watching condensation drip from the ceiling, an early reminder that every part of you will convert moisture to ice if you're not careful. Inside, you lay out your sleeping pad and bag, smoothing the creases until it feels like a makeshift sanctuary. Tent poles click into place with reassuring finality, and the door zips up with a sound that makes your heart thrum. You pause, fingers brushing nylon, and inhale the slightly antiseptic scent mixed with cold air. This small cocoon will be your refuge for the next 2 nights, a place to rest, to eat, and to dream, or at least half dream, before the next climb. Outside, the communal cook tent beckons with the promise of warmth and sustenance. You sling your pack onto a spare chair and duck inside, trading greetings with climbers from Nepal, Italy, and South Korea. A lanky Sherpa ladles steaming broth into chipped bowls, the aromatic swirl of ginger and garlic offering an invisible embrace. You follow the line, passing climbers, swapping stories and laughter that sound impossible this high up. Your turn comes, and you grasp the bowl with gloves nearly too thick to feel the warmth seeping through the ceramic. You lift it to your lips, and the first sip spills comfort through your chest. The broth is rich, studded with slivers of yak meat and diced potatoes that tumble in a torrent of flavor. You close your eyes, tasting home in every spoonful, cinnamon hints, chili heat, and the satisfying weight of calories that you'll burn twice over in altitude. Beside you, a climber, an Australian named Mark, cracks a joke about the price you pay to feel warm at 6,000 meters. At home, I'd kill for a bowl of this, he says, steam curling around his beanie. You nod, grinning through your exhaustion. Here we pay in chattering teeth and frozen lids, you reply, and laughter bursts between you, echoing in the low ceiling tent. Between slurps, you ask about Mark's route choice and discover he's aiming for the West Ridge, an uncommon path that draws few climbers. He says he craves solitude, but you sense he also craves a challenge that feels entirely his own. You share your plan, the standard southeast ridge via the Lhotse face. You both admit that whether you choose the crowded path or the lonely one, the mountain's spirit remains unswayed by ambition. After the meal, you linger to refill your water bottle from a steam kettle. The cook warns you to keep hydrated. Drink now, or your body will betray you later, she says matter of factly. You nod, grateful for the straightforward warning. You sip again, letting warmth course through your fingers and fill your belly. Stepping out, you find the sun's rays brighter at this height, cutting across the horizon like liquid gold. You squint against glare, and sunglasses press against your cheeks, muffling the chill. In the distance, clouds spill through valleys below you, looking like an ocean frozen mid-wave. Peaks poke through this sea of cotton, Amadablam Lhotse Nuptse, each one a reminder that your journey is part of a grander ancient tapestry. You return to your tent to organize gear. Clipping carabiners to belt loops, you check crampons inside their bag. You lay out thermo layers, waterproof shell gloves, and harness, arranging them like a ritual offering to the mountain. Each item has its place and purpose. Your gloves press into your palms, and you wiggle your fingers, testing how they respond. You rub your cheeks and feel the subtle sting of cold, a whisper of frostbite if you neglect proper care. At the tent entrance, you roll back the flap and inhale deeply. The thin air greets you with a cool rush that clears your mind. Around you, climbers peer out of tents, consult route maps, or stand by with headlamps for an evening climb. You look at the huddle of tents and feel connected, as if each one houses a soul equally determined to stand atop the world. You wander to a ledge overlooking Camp 1, where two guides adjust ropes that snake up the mountain's face. You ask them about the next rotation higher up the Lhotse face, then back down to Camp 1 to rest. One guide, Dawa, offers a bead of prayer flag colored cord and motions you to tie it to a stake. Together, you wind your cord around a metal hook, and as you tie the final knot, you whisper a wish for safe passage. The prayer flag colors above flutter in approval. Nearby, an Italian climber named Sophia invites you to join her for tea back at the cook tent. You accept, and both of you trudge there with cups balanced in your gloves. She talks about scaling the Matterhorn last year, the thrill and terror coiled together like that day's broth. You share your near solo trek in Alaska, the time you broke through an ice crust and sank up to your waist in frozen slush. She winces in sympathy and hands you sugar to sweeten your story. Conversation ebbs and flows, laughter punctuating tales of frost nipped toes and self inflicted sunburns. In this circle, everyone's scars become badges of honor. Even your mild altitude headache feels worthy of mentioning. We all share that Sophia says sipping tea, it's our ticket to Everest. You nod, feeling the absurdity and solidarity in that statement. As daylight wanes, you help Dawa and another Sherpa attach reflective markers to exposed guy lines around camp. The markers catch the fading light, turning tent lines into glowing threads that weave safety into chaos. You stand back admiring how human order makes a foothold amid raw nature. The guides share tips. Secure lines. Now, the wind can wake you like a freight train, Dawa warns. You press each marker in place, grateful for the kinship built by shared tasks. Night begins to swallow Camp 1, and headlamps flicker on like constellations reborn below the actual stars. You head back to your tent, shoulders heavy, but spirit lightened by camaraderie. Inside, you stew a few freeze dried vegetables with a packet of couscous, stirring until the grains plump with flavor. You eat by headlamp muscles rotting slight jelly from fatigue, but heart buoyed by newfound friends. You clean your gear, wiping ice off crampons, drying gloves inside your sleeping bag before settling in. Outside, laughter drifts through the nylon walls as climbers share jokes about the night's expected cold. You lean back, feeling the tent's curves hug you, and inhale the mingled scents of sweat plastic and yak butter tea. Your mind drifts over the day's small victories, pitching the tent without finger, fumbling, bonding over tea with strangers who feel like kindred spirits, and having enough warmth inside your body to stoke hope. In this community of dreamers and daredevils, you realize your journey is shared, that each person's triumph feeds another's courage. As you zip up your sleeping bag, the world outside, dark and vast, you sigh with contentment. You know the mountain's trials will increase, but tonight you forged connections that will sustain you as much as any piece of gear. You close your eyes, lulled by distant laughter and the mountain's low hum, ready to face tomorrow's climb with comrades by your side. You wake to a dull thud behind your eyes, as if a hammer strikes an anvil on repeat. The nylon walls of your tent tremble as the morning wind tugs on the guy lines you helped mark last night. You roll over fingers, brushing a frozen patch on the fabric, and sit up slowly. The world tilts at a harsh angle, and your breakfast sounds like the distant echo of a storm. You unzip the tent flap and peer into a world wrapped in pale pink dawn. Prayer flags flutter above you, their colors muted by distance, yet still vibrant against the glacier's blue-white canvas. You pause, head in your hands, as dizziness washes through you like a wave. Your stomach churns, and you suppress the urge to hurl into the gravel outside. Instead, you steady yourself against the tent pole, breathing shallowly until the room stops spinning. A knot of worry tightens in your chest. This isn't the usual exhaustion from yesterday's climb. This is something sharper, something that strikes at the core of your body. You remember your guide's warning: altitude sickness doesn't wait. You scan your pack for the pulse oximeter, your tiny guardian against invisible peril, and clip it to your fingertip. The red LEDs blink, and the numbers appear: oxygen saturation at 82%, heart rate 112. Your breath hitches. Back at base camp, you hovered around 93%. Here, you expected a dip, but not a plunge. You tug on your shell jacket and step out, the chill biting through every layer. You settle onto a flat rock beside a cluster of tents and raise your arm to check the readings again. The numbers wobble like an unstable ladder: 80%, 115 BPM. Each inhale feels ragged, like pulling air through a clogged filter. You press your palm to the rock, hoping for grounding, but the pulse in your wrist leaps as if startled. You struggle to recall the list of warnings: relentless headache, nausea, loss of appetite, dizziness, and in severe cases, fluid in lungs or brain. Your head pounds with each beat, and nausea claws at your throat. You lean forward, stomach roiling, and force yourself to take a sip of water. The plastic taste fills your mouth, and you swallow hard, willing your gut to calm. From your peripheral vision, a guide Dawa approaches with a concerned look. He kneels beside you and offers a hand. AMS warning signs, he says quietly. We watch these closely. You nod, voice dry, I feel. Off, dizzy, sick. He checks your saturation again, then fixes your gaze. You rest now. No hike until you stabilize. His tone is firm, but gentle, like a captain steering you away from a hidden reef. You lie back on the rock legs extended and press your head against your pack. The backpack's bulk muffles the wind's howl. You close your eyes, picturing the sunset ridge from Section 2, and whisper a promise: ride this storm out. Yet each breath feels borrowed, as if the mountain might reclaim it at any moment. Somewhere behind you, climbers lace boots and strap on crampons for their rotation to Camp 2. The rhythmic click-click is oddly soothing, a mechanical heartbeat contrasting with your own irregular pulse. You force your eyes open and watch their silhouette against the glacier. You envy their confident strides, but remind yourself that prudence now may grant you strength later. A pang of hunger visits hollow and unwelcome. Your mouth waters at the memory of yesterday's broth, but a single thought of swallowing sends your stomach into rebellion. You resist the urge to vomit, gripping a loose stone until the queasiness ebbs slightly. You recognize this as your body's alarm bell, yet another ominous warning that Everest exacts dues in more ways than physical danger. You flick open your journal and attempt to write. Letters wobble on the page. Day 3, Camp 1. Feeling dizzy and nauseous. Pulse is. You wince as each word crystallizes the reality you hoped to avoid. The journal tumbles from your fingers, pages scattering in the wind. You sit up to chase them, but another wave of dizziness pins you to the rock. You abandon the pages, letting them flutter like prayer flags across the moraine. Dawa returns with a small insulated mug. Honey tea, he says, handing it to you. Ginger helps settle. You accept it with shaky hands, the steam swirling words of comfort. You cradle the mug, letting the warmth seep into your palms. The honey's sweetness and ginger's bite ignite a tiny flicker of relief in your belly. You sip slowly, counting each swallow to distract your mind from the churning below. As the tea's warmth spreads, your headache recedes from a jackhammer to a persistent throb. Your breathing eases, and the pulse oximeter climbs to 86%. It's still low, but it's progress. You exhale, eyes closing, and allow yourself a moment of gratitude for Dawa's watchful care, for the mug warming your hands, for the rock steady beneath you. An hour passes in this fragile equilibrium. You sip more tea, nibble a small piece of ginger candy, and rest. You think of the glacier's relentless blue glare, of the serrated horizon that drew you here. You wonder how many climbers ignore these warning signs until it's too late. You press your fingers to your temples again, massaging in small circles to coax away tension. Your guide's voice interrupts your reverie. Let's try a short walk, he suggests. Just around the camp perimeter, you rise, knees buckling slightly, but Dawa supports your arm. You step off the rock and stumble forward, each footfall a muted protest. Yet, as you circle the clustered tents, the act of movement steadies you, proof that your body can still obey. The walk is slow measured. You avoid steep slopes sticking to level ground. Soon the ache in your joints blends with anticipation rather than fear. You pause at a viewpoint where prayer flags frame the horizon in red, blue, yellow, green, white. You rest your hand on one flag, whispering a brief thanks for the clarity to recognize your limits. Back at your tent, you shed layers and lie down fully fatigued, weighing on you like a thick blanket. You eat a small bite of energy bar, just a few crumbs, and chase it with water. You press your palm to your chest, feeling the slow, steady rise and fall. You close your eyes and focus on each breath, seeking calm in the controlled rhythm you practiced in Section 2. You drift into a light half sleep where dreams stitch together images of the Khumbu Icefall's ladders and the Lhotse Face's black ice. In one dream, you're tethered to prayer flags floating above the camp. In another, you're climbing, but your body moves in slow motion, lungs aching. Each dream threatens to unravel, but you force yourself to grip the mental rope, grounding in the thought of waking. When you finally wake again, the sun is high and the camp's activity hums around you. You unzip the tent and inhale the bracing air now tinged with spring's faint warmth. You test standing and find your legs surprisingly ready. Your headache has softened to a whisper, and your nausea has receded to fleeting echoes. The pulse oximeter reads 89%. Not perfect, but acceptable. You gather your journal pages, retrieving only the few that drifted closest. You set them neatly on a flat rock and rewrite the morning's notes with firmer strokes, acknowledging your first real confrontation with altitude sickness. You write, warning signs are clear dizziness, nausea, low saties. Rest and acclimatize before moving on. You pack your journal away and stare up at the plateau above Camp 1, the route to Camp 2 curving like a massive white serpent up the mountain's flank. You feel the weight of decision push to Camp 2 now and risk worsening symptoms or wait another day and sacrifice acclimatization pace. Yet you remember Dawa's counsel, respect the mountain's signals. You slip on your gloves and adjust your backpack lightly. You step outside to greet the day's climb, whether it's a simple perimeter walk or the next push upward. Each breath feels earned, each step a reaffirmation that you've listened when the mountain whispered danger. You remind yourself surviving Everest begins with humility and healing. The body's alarm bells is part of the ascent. You wake before dawn, the Himalayan sky inked in navy and studded with cold, distant lights. You unzip your tent just enough to glimpse the first rosy tendrils of sunrise brushing the horizon. Today's plan: climb toward Camp 2 at 6,400 meters, then return to Camp 1, an acclimatization rotation that feels like a cruel dance with altitude. You slip into base layers and shell, feeling the familiar pinch of layers you've donned so many times now. Your breath clouds in front of you as you load a small pack extra water energy bars, your pulse oximeter, and a flask of hot honey tea. Outside the camp is a faint hum of headlamps bobbing. Guides and Sherpas move with practiced efficiency, clipping into fixed lines and testing crampon spikes on the icy ground. You follow Dawa, whose steady stride echoes the steady heartbeat you're trying to cultivate. Each step up the rocky slope demands focused effort, like pushing the mountain away rather than letting it engulf you. Your legs burn a familiar ache by now, but you press on, determined to earn the thin air above. The path narrows as you approach the bottom of the Lhotse face. It's a towering wall of ice, its gradient so steep that fixed ropes are the only safe way up. You clip into the rope and lean back in your harness toes, digging into the ice. The guide ahead calls out commands in clipped English. On belay, up you go. You trust the rope beneath your weight and swing one foot upward, then the other, the metal teeth of your crampons biting into frozen glass. Your breath comes in measured puffs: inhale, hold, exhale, reminding you of our breath count ritual. Each cycle feels like negotiation, but so far the mountain concedes. Halfway up, you pause on a narrow ledge. The rope ahead stretches into a glittering spider web of ice, higher than your mind wants to fathom. You glance down, the world falls away into swirling clouds, below prayer flags appearing like tiny stained glass mosaics among the white. You close your eyes and press your cheek against the rope, testing its solidity, then press back to the wall. Every ounce of fear collects in your stomach, but you steady yourself with a deep breath. 1, air rushes in. 2, hold. 3, release. Your pulse oximeter reads 78% heart rate, 120. Not great, but expected at this altitude. You open your eyes and smile at the improvement from yesterday's dip. You push on legs burning, but spirit tethered to the mountain's rhythm. A gust of wind rattles the ice face, and you tighten your grip headlamp beam dancing across jagged ridges. Ahead, the guide signals a short break. You drop to your knees on the icy ledge, unclip your water bladder, and sip greedily. The water tastes faintly metallic, but it feels like lifeblood in your veins. You nibble a cold and energy bar, its chalky sweetness reminding you of childhood snacks, and the small comfort warms you from the inside out. As you sip, you recall the low percentage sideways walks between MA lines you analyzed back home, flat, indecisive motion that gripped markets with uncertainty. Here, you're walking horizontally against indecision, the mountain's version of consolidation, and you want nothing more than to break out upward. Yet the point of this rotation is the opposite to consolidate strength. You press your palm to the ice, grounding yourself, and whisper, consolidate, adapt, then ascend. The guide calls you forward, and you hook back in. The next pitch is steeper, requiring kick steps and more reliance on your arms. Your shoulders protest, but you drive upward steadily. The wind cuts sharper here, slicing at exposed cheeks. You pull your balaclava up, leaving only your eyes visible, eyes that scan the ice for the next secure foot placement, then the next. You reach a small plateau marked by a fixed anchor, the unofficial Camp 1.5. It's just a sliver of flat space where a single Sherpa has pitched a micro tent. You remove your pack and let your body slump. The sky here is an even deeper blue, as if gravity has bled color from it. The panorama is breathtaking. The summit of Everest looms ahead like a frosted cathedral, its profile jagged and imposing. The oxygen here hovers near 75%, and every movement is a victory. You settle on the ground and unpack your flask. You pour hot tea into a plastic cup, watching steam spiral upward. You savor a slow sip, tasting honey and spice, and realization. This rotation isn't about planting flags on summits. It's about planting resilience in yourself. You take out your journal and jot a few lines under the dim glow of your headlamp. Camp 156 400 Bammerwell. Sats 75%. Legs and lungs remind me altitude is a parasite, steals strength, but can be starved through gradual exposure. A gust hurls snow across the tent, and you snap the journal shut. You've lingered long enough. You refill your water bladder, stalking the last precious drops. Before descending, you unclip from the rope and strip off your crampons. Relief floods through your feet, even at this height. You stand for a moment, head tilted upward, eyes tracing the road above. This glimpse confirms both your vulnerability and your determination. You will acclimatize, or you will adapt in other ways. The descent becomes a controlled reverse climb. Step down, balance, lean back. Gravity helps here, but demands caution. A misstep could send you sliding into a yawning crevasse. You descend methodically, each step a contract with yourself to remain cautious. As you reach the base of the Lhotse face, the fixed ropes vanish, leaving you on familiar gravel. You unclip your harness and shuffle off muscles trembling with fatigue and exhilaration. Camp 1 emerges like a mirage. You stagger toward your tent, collapsing into a sitting position on your sleeping pad. The warmth of the nylon cocoon greets you, a small sanctuary after the high altitude gauntlet. You remove your boots and massage your calves, feeling tender strands of muscle awaken. Outside, the midday sun casts sparkling patterns across the glacier, and you squint through the tent flap, letting light and distance wash over you. Inside, you sip more honey tea, the sweetness coating your throat. You nibble handfuls of freeze dried rice and vegetables, forcing calories into a body that fights each bite. Yet you know that nourishment now pays dividends in the night's recovery. You clip on your pulse oximeter and watch the numbers steadily climb to 88%. Not perfect, but a clear sign your body is learning the mountain's language. You lie back and focus on your breath again, 2 counts in, 3 counts out, seeking calm in repetition. You replay moments from the climb up, the frosty bite of wind, the metallic taste of exertion, the awe-inspiring vista. You feel pride in your body's concession. Each small improvement is a foothold for tomorrow's ascent. Later, you recompress your notes, reflecting on how each rotation is like a market cycle: push highs, retrace lows, consolidate strength, then attempt new peaks. Here on Everest, the stakes are higher. Misread a cycle, and the cost is life. You affirm your commitment. Listen to your body, respect its limits, earn each meter. As afternoon fades into dusk, the camp's rhythms shift. Climbers return from rotations, some jubilant, others broken. You share stories in the mess tent, voices hushed but brimming with gravity. Tonight you will rest twice as deeply, letting muscles and lungs recover. You check your oxygen saturation one last time, 90%. A milestone. You crawl into your sleeping bag before the wind grows ferocious. The tent's interior glows with headlamp light, filtered through nylon, creating a cocoon of safety. You close your eyes and feel the day's rotation settle into your bones. You dream of tomorrow's climb, but tonight you celebrate this victory over your body's rebellion. In the quiet, you whisper a mantra: adaptation is ascent. You emerge before dawn's glow, as if summoned by the mountain itself. The air is thinner already, each breath a hushed negotiation with gravity. Today, you approach the Khumbu icefall from a different angle. Your guide warns that crevasse shifts overnight can rewrite the route without notice. You tug on bulky mittens and shoulder your pack crampons, clicking against the icy ground in a rhythm that both soothes and alarms. The icefall appears ahead like a frozen cathedral, laid flat, monstrous seracs, leaning precariously, ice towers, suspended mid-collapse, and yawning chasms, veiled by fragile snow bridges. A faint murmur travels through the line of climbers, the collective intake of breath before the plunge into chaos. You clip into the fixed rope, like securing a lifeline to sanity. Your first step onto the ice awakens every nerve ending. The surface beneath your crampons cracks softly, as if murmuring secrets of past climbers swallowed by the glacier. You advance slowly, one foot in front of the other, trusting the rope that spans serac-strewn ground. Your shoulders tense, remembering videos you watched of ice avalanches, serious enough to dismiss every other fear. The sun begins its ascent, painting the ice in sapphire and apricot hues. You pause on a ladder bridge, suspended over a deep crevasse. The ladder's rungs gleam silver, but the cavern below dissolves into a void of blue-black shadow. You plant your foot on the first rung, feeling it flex beneath your weight. A gust rattles the ladder, and you steady yourself by pressing a hand to a rope railing. Your heart hammers in your rib cage, each beat a warning and encouragement rolled into one. Halfway across, you look down. Prayer flags drift in the depths as if suspended mid-fall. You recall Section Three's camaraderie at Camp 1, the cheery banter that now feels distant. Here, isolation grips you tighter than any harness. You steady your gaze on the opposite ledge and focus on measured breaths. One, air rushes in, two, hold, three, release. Over and over until the foothold beneath your boots feels steady again. You cross step by trembling step until the ladder ends. Relief floods you, but there's no time to linger. A guide ahead yells, "Move," and you heed the call, clipping back onto a new rope section. Your crampons sink into an ice ramp that slopes sharply upward, fixed lines snaking overhead like spinal columns. You shimmy up, hands locked in J-hooks, drawing your body against the ice. The climb tests every scrap of strength in your core and forearms. Midway up the mountain groans a low rumble like distant thunder, but sharper. Seracs overhead shift, sending shards of ice cascading in a glistening waterfall. You freeze for a heartbeat, then cling tighter, waiting until the shards taper off. When the sky falls silent again, you exhale, trying not to think of the weight of gravity that just obeyed the mountain's whim. You reach a flatter section known as the popcorn field, where snow mounds cover collapse-prone ice. Guides ahead test each mound with ice axes before signaling safe passage. You follow suit, driving your pick into the snow, then tapping to feel the hollow layer beneath. This cautious dance reminds you that every step on Everest is part intuition, part science, and part faith. A sudden crack behind you snaps your head around. Another chunk of ice detaches further back, crashing into the wall with seismic force. You duck instinctively, heart jolting adrenaline through your veins. Your fingertips go numb with shock, but you force them to work, unclip from the old rope clip to the new, and press onward. There is no time to fear, only time to act. As you ascend, frost builds on your eyelashes and mustache, tiny crystals that sparkle in headlamp light. You lick your lips, tasting ice and salt. Your breath steams, condensing into miniature clouds that drift upward. You remind yourself that discomfort is temporary, like the sideways consolidation phases in trading that precede explosive breakouts. This phase feels like consolidation, too, testing resolve, reinforcing technique, and preparing you for the next ascent. The route steepens into the Heartbreak Hill, a moniker that belies the satisfaction of reaching its crest. Each step feels weighted, as if you're carrying more altitude with you than air. Your chest tightens with exertion and elevation, but you grip the ice, driving your boots into the slope. The rope ahead crests the ridge, and you heave yourself over the final bulge. You stumble onto a ledge, legs trembling. Before you stretches a crested ridge that glows pale under the rising sun, the path toward Camp 2. Camp 2 lies nestled against the western Coombs ice bowl, a vision of safety after the icefall's capricious terror. You take a moment to absorb the panorama, the glacier below like fractured glass peaks, muted by distance, prayer flags fluttering at the camp beyond. You survey your pack, empty water bottles, replaced energy bar wrappers crumpled, and pat it in silent gratitude for carrying you here. You reach for your flask and sip the last of your honey tea. The warmth anchors your spirit, rekindling the camaraderie you left back in Camp 1. You allow yourself a fleeting smile, recognizing that you've crossed one of the most dangerous sections alive and intact. A guide waves you forward, and you follow the fixed line toward Camp 2, the western comb sprawling beneath you like a frozen amphitheater. Each step down feels like shedding weight, gravity offering a merciful tug. Yet in this descent, you remain vigilant. Crevasses may lurk beneath thin snowdrifts. You test each step, boot tapping ice axe, probing. Soon you spot the bright tents of Camp 2, arranged in tight semicircles against the ice bowl. Sherpas move supplies on pulleys, chanting soft mantras that mingle with the wind's whistle. You reach the camp gate, a loop of prayer flags, and step beneath, feeling as though entering a sanctuary after pilgrimage. You unclip your harness and shake legs stiff from belaying. The tent's interior welcomes you, a sheltered cocoon away from the icefall's capricious whims. You kick off your boots and cling to your gloves, rubbing them between your palms to coax back warmth. Your pack drops next to your cot, and you unzip a dry bag for a quick snack. Inside, you meet familiar faces. Mark from Camp 1 offers a thumbs up, and Sophia raises a cup of tea in salute. Laughter ripples through the tent as you recount the creaking seracs and the ice avalanche. You sip broth from a thermos rich, salty, and healing. With each spoonful, you reclaim energy and ease tension from strained muscles. Outside, the sun beats down on the ice bowl, transforming it into a world of flickering light. But altitude still grips you. Camp 2 sits above 6,400 meters, a place where every breath is a gift. You clip on your pulse oximeter and watch it hover around 70%, a number that would alarm many, but here is routine. You swallow as the realization settles. Your body has adapted enough to endure the icefall's dangers and reach another altitude milestone. You journal a brief note. Conquered icefall, survived Serac shifts, reached Camp 2. Sati is 70%. Humbled and alive. The pen feels heavy but steady in your glove, each word a talisman against doubt. As the afternoon sun begins its retreat, you help arrange supplies, stacking oxygen bottles, organizing dry bags, and testing rope tethers. Each act reminds you that survival on Everest is woven from practical tasks as much as mental fortitude. When evening falls, you huddle inside the communal tent, headlamp beams drawing halos in the cold haze. You sip tea, share stories, and forge bonds that feel as essential as any piece of gear. Outside, guides secure tents against expected winds. You lie back later in your bag, spirits buoyed by having crossed the icefall and gained the western comb's shelter. Your eyelids grow heavy, and as you drift toward sleep, you carry the icefall's lessons with you. Trust the rope, respect the ice, and embrace fear as a compass. You skirt the western Coombs ice bowl at first light, the sun's pale glow illuminating the route toward the Lhotse Face's base. Your legs ache from yesterday's haul through the Khumbu icefall and up to Camp 2, but adrenaline and anticipation fuel you onward. Fixed ropes rise like silver veins into the steep ice, and you clip in shoulders squared as if bracing for a blow you're determined to withstand. The climb begins with familiar motions, one foot in front of the other, your crampons biting into ice, J-hooks locking your arms in place. But today your mind quivers with a new tension. You remind yourself of the mantra you whispered at Camp 1-5: consolidate, adapt, then ascend. Today, consolidation feels like fragile confidence walking a tightrope. Halfway up the steep slope, you reach a narrow ledge that demands precise footwork. Beneath you, the mountain drops away into a yawning lushar crevasse, its depths swallowed by morning mist. Ahead, the rope stretches taut over unforgiving ice. You plant your crampons carefully, testing each placement twice before committing your weight. Your gloves stiff with cold struggle to articulate fine movements, and you feel a creeping doubt. What if today is the day my body betrays me? You inhale, but the breath feels shallow, as though squeezed through an unseen vice. The guide ahead fixes his gaze on the next anchor point, but you can't tear your eyes from the chasm at your side. Your heart hammers so loud you fear it will drown out every rational thought. You remind yourself, focus on the next foothold, the next hand placement, nothing more. A sudden slip, just enough for your crampon to skid on a thin glaze of ice, jerks your body sideways. Instinctively, you lock your arms and lean back into the harness. The rope catches you, but your stomach drops into the void you nearly fell into. The guide shouts, "Steady," and you blink past the fear tasting its bitter tang. Your hands shake as you press ice tools into the slope, but the motion steadies you. You place one foot securely, then the other reattaching your ascender. Your breath hitches on a sob, but you clamp your jaw and press onward. Each movement is deliberate, measured a negotiation between you and the mountain. You pause on a small rest ledge, knees trembling, breath ragged. The guide checks your saturation 72%. Your heart rate measures 125 BPM. You nod a silent affirmation that you'll continue. You take a small sip from your water bladder, the liquid shockingly cold, but necessary. You force down a bite of energy gel, its sweetness coating your tongue, anchoring you in the present. You roll your shoulders, releasing tightness that spread like ice through your back. You tuck your pepper spray sized canister of hand warmers into your glove pocket, then twist the hand warmer to kickstart its glow. You press it against your palm, feeling warmth seep into frozen fingers. As relief spreads, so does resolve. The route steepens again, requiring more reliance on fixed Jumar ascenders than footwork alone. You clip and slide. The Jumar up the rope plant your boots on the icy rail and stand pulling yourself upward like a puppeteer closing a trap door. The wind tugs at you cold enough to sting exposed cheeks, but you lean into it, letting the struggle sharpen rather than shatter you. Emerging onto a narrower ridge, you spot the next anchor bolt, a tiny metal dot in a vast white canvas. It feels impossibly far away, but each small movement brings you closer. You remind yourself that you've done harder things. Camp 1.5's consolidation, the icefall's terror, and the Lhotse face's ascent. This is simply another test of technique and nerve. As you near the bolt, a gust of wind rakes the ridge, threatening to upset your balance. You drop to all fours, pressing your torso into the rope for stability. The guide's voice carries on the wind. Take your time. You wait for the gust to pass, counting breaths until the world feels still again. Then, inch by inch, you close the gap, hand reaching, securing the bolt. You clip your carabiner in and exhale a breath you didn't realize you held. Your shoulders slump in relief, but the ledge ahead beckons. You climb the final few meters and step onto a flat perch, barely large enough for one person. Below, a cascade of ice spills over the mountain's flank, and above the route continues skyward. You lean against your pack, chest heaving, and let your gaze travel over the vast horizon, the western Coombs ice bowl behind you, Nuptse's ridge cutting across the skyline, and the summit of Everest elusive and alluring, half hidden by morning haze. Your near fall flashes through your mind, a stark reminder of the mountain's impartial judgment. Yet beneath the adrenaline, you feel a deeper sense you survived that crack in your confidence. You close your eyes and press a gloved hand to your heart, acknowledging the fear, the trembling, and the triumph of continuing despite both. You carve a quick note in your journal, Section 7. Near fall at narrow ledge, confidence cracked but not broken. Then you stash it in your pack, sealing the memory in writing so you can recall both vulnerability and courage in cold, clear detail. A guide signals you onward. You stand, legs still shaky, but spirit steadier. You brush frost from your goggles and refasten your harness. With one final look at the drop below, you set your stance, grip the rope, and continue the climb toward Camp 3, each movement a quiet oath that you will not let doubt define you here on Everest. The wind picks up as you climb into the afternoon, whipping ice crystals into your eyelashes and filling your lungs with stinging shards. You press your face into the slope, feet churning above a ridge that seems to narrow with every step. Ahead, storm clouds roil over Everest's summit ridge, bulging and black as if some colossal beast gathers breath before a roar. Your guide, Tenzing, pauses and glances skyward. Time's up, he says quietly. Turn around. A sharp pang lances through your chest at the word. You've spent months training for this summit, push counting days, planning oxygen caches, visualizing that final step. But now the mountain issues its ultimatum, whether or ambition. You look at the swirling clouds, the jagged crest smeared in steel gray, and feel the truth settle like ice in your gut. Your boots hesitate on the icy slope. You taste disappointment, a metallic tang richer than any altitude sickness. You swallow it down with a gulp of water, reminding yourself that this decision may save your life. You nod to Tenzing, who clips into the descent rope, and you follow his lead, sliding backward down the Lhotse face. Descending feels like betrayal and relief wrapped into one. Gravity accelerates you, pulling each step faster, forcing you to clamp into fixed lines to avoid a slip. You pass climbers still ascending, faces flushed with effort, eyes widened in disbelief as they spot your retreat. You offer a nod. No words can explain the calculus of weather and survival. Halfway down, the wind shifts direction, hurling snow across your path. Visibility drops to a few meters as the storm's edge brushes the mountain. You lean into your hood eyes, squinting behind goggles. Every feature of the slope blurs into a uniform white, save for the rope's pale shimmer. You follow it like a lifeline muscle memory, guiding foot placements you've rehearsed countless times. Your pulse quickens not from exertion, but adrenaline. You trace the paper through the whiteout, one clip after another, until you glimpse the popcorn field's hazy outlines. You remember the cautious steps there, the crunch of snow over ice pockets. Now you navigate the field by feel and memory, tapping each mound with your ice axe to check for hollows beneath. As you emerge from the icefall's maw, the storm's full force greets you. Snow spirals horizontally, erasing landmarks. You stumble into a narrow crevasse tunnel, an accidental sanctuary from the wind. You press your back against ice walls, winds howl muffled behind thick walls of blue. You squat, heart pounding, and clip into a safety line Tenzing secured earlier. Wait here, he shouts above the roar. You nod, stamping feet to chase numbness from your boots. Visibility outside remains nil, but in this tunnel everything feels slowed down. You sip water, tasting the mountain's harsh kindness. Sometimes shelter appears in unexpected crevasses. 10 minutes stretch into 30 as the storm rages beyond your ice walls. You close your eyes and focus on counting breaths. Each inhale warms your lungs. Each exhale muffles tension. You picture prayer flags at Camp 1, remembering how you tied your cord to a stake. That ritual tethered you to hope, and now you clutch that memory like a lifeline. When the wind's roar finally softens, you peer out. The world beyond is transformed. Snowdrifts conceal familiar rocks, and the rope up above disappears into a fog that still churns. You scan for Tenzing's headlamp. A faint dot flickers near the crevasse entrance. You unclip stand and stagger toward him. He guides you back to the fixed line voice, firm, lower, slow. Descending further, you measure every movement until the storm's teeth dull. At the base of the Lhotse face, you kick off your crampons and let gravity carry you down steeper gravel slopes. Your boots sink into loose rock, which provides a grounding contrast to the ice above. You plow through snowdrifts, now more ankle than waist, deep gratitude blooming that you're not alone in the whiteout. Camp 2's colored tents appear like mirages, bright beacons in the swirling snow. Guides and Sherpas huddle inside the cook tent, muffled voices calling names. You stumble toward warmth. Tenzing raps on the tent's fabric, and you step inside boots crunching through powdered entryway. Instant warmth embraces you, a swirl of steam from cooking stoves, and the tang of broth. You unzip your jacket, exposing layers caked with ice. A Sherpa offers tea, and you accept the mug warmth, burning your gloved hands. You sip, letting the ginger and honey soothe raw lungs and simmering nerves. The cook tent's chatter buzzes around you, assessments of storm length, rumors of route shifts, murmurs of another summit bid after the weather clears. You glance outside, the storm still bruises the sky, and you realize the mountain's mood has abruptly changed. There's no shame in heeding its warning. You find a corner bench and wrap yourself in a down jacket loaned by a fellow climber. You lean back, closing your eyes, and let the storm lull you into reflection. Disappointment still stings, but you sense a quiet pride. You resisted the urge to gamble with your life. You remember the near fall in Section 7, the icefall's terror in Section 6, all leading to this moment of choice. Night falls early beneath storm laden skies. You retreat to your tent, where Dawa offers a flask of noodle soup. You eat slowly, each spoonful grounding you in gratitude. When you finally lie down, the tent's hum feels like a heartbeat, steady, dependable. Outside, the storm screams against the fabric, but inside, you drift toward sleep. Tonight, you dream not of summits, but of returning home, of sharing this story, of how Everest taught you the value of surrendering ambition to wisdom. Morning arrives with a brittle quiet, as if the storm spent itself overnight just to let you catch your breath. You unzip your tent and gasp. Your cheeks feel like slabs of ice, and your fingertips tingle with the first pangs of frostbite. You slip on your gloves, but the plastic outer shell offers little protection against sub-zero gusts. Today's rotation rests in Camp 2 before moving down to Camp 1. Yet every step toward warmth feels like wading through a winter storm in your own body. You stand and press your palms to your face, feeling rigid skin crack beneath your touch. Each bruise of sensation reminds you that frostbite steals feeling before you realize it's gone. You slide your hand inside a glove liner and probe each fingertip, testing for warmth. Two fingers are numb. There's no tingle, no dull ache, only absence. Your breath catches. You remember warn and respond drills at base camp. Check toes and fingers every hour, massage frozen areas, keep extremities moving. But drills feel trivial when snow tastes like shards on your tongue. You sip lukewarm tea from your flask, letting the liquid chase away some chill. You cradle the mug against your chest, hoping conduction will transfer heat to your core. Each swallow warms your throat, reminding you that nourishment and movement are your only defenses against frostbite's slow siege. You tuck your flask into your jacket pocket, a small oasis stowed close to your heart. Dawa appears at your tent flap, offering a small vinyl pouch. Hand warmers, he murmurs. Use inside gloves. You accept it with trembling fingers, tearing open the pack and placing the tiny heat pack against your palm. Almost instantly, you feel a faint glow, a white ember of relief. You slide the glove liner back on and nestle your fingers around the heat source, flexing each finger to encourage blood flow. The change is gradual, but you welcome every degree of warmth. You pack your gear with methodical slowness, testing each finger as you handle carabiners and zippers. You fasten your harness loop ice axe leash and click crampons into place. Each movement feels labored, the mountain's cold embedding itself deeper in your limbs. You remind yourself, keep moving, or frost will claim more ground. Outside, the camp stirs. Sherpas lug fuel canisters, guides sip tea, and consult route maps. The wind whistles through tent lines, rattling your resolve. You step onto the icy floor and begin walking each footnote in a manifesto titled Endure. You pass climbers rubbing their cheeks, massaging knuckles, and you see in their eyes the same fear you feel, the knowledge that frostbite can arrive in an instant but heal over months. Your path leads to the cook tent. Inside, the air is warm enough to blur the edges of cold. You rest your gloves on a bench and grip the edge, closing your eyes as heat floods your palms. The cook ladles a steaming bowl of porridge, thick, slightly sweet, and piping hot. You cradle the bowl like a raft, guiding each spoonful into your mouth. Warmth spreads from your stomach, outward unfreezing layers of shock one by one. Between bites, you rub your cheeks in slow circles, coaxing color back into pale flesh. You sip tea laced with chili flakes, letting the burn ignite circulation in your throat and cheeks. Each pulse of warmth reminds you that the mountain may steal your edges, but you can reclaim them with vigilance and care. You finish eating and step outside again. The wind slams into you like a warning, but you steel yourself and begin walking toward the small ridge above camp. You need movement to keep blood flowing. Each stride is deliberate, heel toe, never pounding, always steady. You feel your breath shred in your chest, but you count each inhale and exhale, bathing your lungs in motion's gentle heat. Halfway up the ridge, you pause and cup your hands around your face. The glove's interior warmth fights the wind's frozen breath. You peek at your fingertips pink, returning to the pad, though tips remain ghostly white. You press each finger gently, coaxing circulation. You whisper to them, "Stay with me." This small dialogue with your body feels intimate, a pact that your spirit will nurture what the mountain tries to numb. You continue to the ridgetop breath, visible as crystalline clouds. From here, Camp 2 looks like a cluster of fallen gemstones buried in white. You trace a path with your gaze, the route back down to Camp 1. Your mind considers the descent, warmer air thicker, communal tents lower altitude. The plan today, you'll shelter, rest, and begin the slow thaw. Descending demands care your numb fingers must still operate crampons and rope devices. You test each movement before committing weight to a step. When you reach the base of the ridge, you pause at the edge of the ice bowl and clip into the fixed line. You make deliberate moves, hand over hand, foot over foot, feeling for each ice hold. Your numb fingers ache but respond. You coax them with small flexes. Midway down, you spot a Sherpa kneeling on the snow offering a container of hot soup with chunks of yak meat. You unclip and stumble toward him. He hands you the container and you wrap frozen fingers around it. The soup's steam fogs your goggles as you lift the spoon. Each hot mouthful is a revolt against the mountain's cold, a declaration that you will outlast this frostbite scare. As you finish, the Sherpa places a warm pack at your feet, like a cocoon formed on the snow. You sit and slide your feet into thin liners against the pack's heat, massaging cold toes back to life. You sit for several minutes, legs outstretched, head bowed. You feel heat seep upward, a trickle, at first, then a rush. You savor the slow return of sensation as a triumph nearly as sweet as summiting. Eventually, you stand and resume descent. Every step down is a step toward recovery, lower altitude, higher temperatures, and the embrace of base camp's resources. You think of ice's duality. It can kill, but it can also preserve. It binds, but it reveals beauty in stillness. You acknowledge both sides as you move. You reach Camp 1 recognizable by prayer flags and the familiar cacophony of tents. Guides greet you with smiles relief etched in their faces. You step into your tent and remove gloves, revealing pink fingertips that ache pleasantly. You rub them together, feeling each joint awaken. You trace your cheekbones, feeling the return of warmth and pliancy. Inside, you brew another cup of ginger honey tea and huddle under a down jacket. You journal a short entry, frostbite scare at Camp 2. Numb fingers, stone cheeks rebirthed by warmth and vigilance. You reflect on how Everest challenges both body and mind, teaching lessons beyond altitude lessons in care, attention, and respect for one's limits. As dusk falls, you drift into a deep sleep, cocooned in warmth and camaraderie. The frostbite fear lingers like a warned alarm, but you've answered its call. Tonight you rest, knowing you pushed through cold's bite and lived to tell the story. You awaken under the thin fabric of your tent, the early morning hush punctuated by distant groans of ice shifting on the mountain's spine. You unzip a small ventilation slit and peer out. The summit ridge is bathed in pale gold, the dream you've chased for weeks glittering on the horizon. Your heart stutters with hope, but your body whispers a harsher truth. Oxygen in your bottles is lower than planned, and the wind's howl last night cracked through nylon like a warning shot. You swing your legs out of the cocoon of your sleeping bag and sit on the edge of your cot, boots cold against your palms. You unclip your pulse oximeter and press it to your finger, 68% heart rate, 130 BPM. Each breath feels borrowed. You remember your guide's pre-dawn briefing. We push to the South Col, then summit if conditions allow. Turn around no later than 2 p.m., summit or die. The words echo like a vow and a threat. You inspect your oxygen regulator, counting bottles, 3 full, but dwindling canisters, each meant for 2 hours. Under ideal flow, that's 6 hours. You need at least 8 hours to climb from Camp 4 at the South Col to the summit and back to Camp 4. Your throat constricts. You modulate possibilities, ration oxygen, increase flow, descend earlier, or press on and risk exhausting supply. Outside, Sherpa figures move with ghostly grace, clipping into fixed ropes that vanish into dawn's glow. A cluster gathers at the tent entrance, hushed chatter passing around a bottle of clear oxygen. You stand and swallow hard. Each step out into the crisp air feels like stepping onto a tightrope woven from frost and fervor. You strap on your boots and seal your layers against sub-zero air. You adjust your harness and test crampons one last time. Your gear is your armor, yet you feel strangely exposed. Your heart pounds as you clip into the fixed line leading toward the South Col. The wind gusts, and you lean into it, bracing against the mountain's raw breath. Step by measured step, you descend from Camp 2 through the western Coombe, past Camp 1.5's anchor, and onto the snow-bleached plateau of the South Col. The wind here shrieks constant warnings, and you unzip your jacket just enough to check your oxygen gauge. 2 canisters remain at half. You do the math in your head, 4 hours left on oxygen. You need 5 to summit and return safely. Your guide Tenzing beckons from a rope line below the Geneva spur. Up here, he calls. You oblige, heart sinking and soaring in equal measure. You climb the spur's steep, icy slope, ice axe serrations biting and crampons clawing. Each motion is a reminder that you are alive and capable even in this rarefied air. You scramble over the spur and emerge onto the mesmerizing expanse of the yellow band, a ribbon of golden rock winding between cliffs of ice. The sun glints off brittle ridges. You pause to catch your breath, tasting exhaustion in each inhale. Your breaths scatter and condense, turning into fragile clouds that drift away. Beyond lies the Geneva Spur's final rocky hump that frames the south summit. You climb with careful hands, stepping on slippery rock and ice. At the top, a sea of white spills northward, leading your gaze to the summit pyramid lit in rose beige dawn light. You cup your hands over your mouth, exhaling prayers into the void. Below, Tenzing adjusts your oxygen mask and checks your regulator. You nod, acknowledging both gratitude and dread. You know the clock has already tipped toward zero. You swallow a gel pack and sip a small mouthful of oxygen, feeling the flow ease your lungs. You clip back onto the fixed line and begin the final push toward the summit. The path narrows into a knife-edge ridge, each step a step closer to both glory and danger. To your left, the northwest face plummets. To your right, the swirling canyons of Tibet. You plant every foot, deliberately focusing on technique to conserve oxygen and energy. Your headlamp rests unused in daylight now, but the heavy weight of its battery reminds you that every ounce carried here strains both pack and person. The wind rises, buffeting you with whiteout blasts. You lean into the gusts, pressing chest first against your harness. The ridge's teeth jar you, forcing knees to bend and wrists to clamp rope above. Suddenly, a shrill gust rakes your body, snapping the rope taut and nearly yanking you off balance. You clamp your ice axe into a solid anchor, letting go of the rope with one hand to tether yourself. Your heart hammers again, but you breathe through the shock. This is Everest's game. Break your confidence, then watch if you rebuild it. You refasten your grip and press on. Each meter gained feels like swimming through syrup. Your lungs ache and your mask hisses faint defeat with every exhale. You glance down at the regulator, only 1 canister remains full. 4 hours to summit and back. Time stretches thin like the air around you. You slow your pace, rationing oxygen, asking for time to consider. Ahead, the summit ridge crests and falls like the final hurdle between you and Everest's crown. You raise your head, tasting fear and longing in equal measure. The summit looms within reach, yet feels further than ever. Your mind flickers to Section 7's near fall, Section 8's storm, Section 9's frostbite, scare the script of trials that build you. Now the mountain demands its final act, choose ambition or survival. Your gaze drifts to the red fabric of a small tent pitched precariously on the ridge Camp 4, the last refuge before the summit bid. You calculate descent time, 2 hours back to South Col, plus the unknown risk in darkness. Your canisters won't last. Your fingers tighten on your ice axe and rope clip. You taste metal in your mouth, perhaps fear, perhaps resolve. You look at Tenzing's calm silhouette against the sky. He raises an eyebrow as though inviting you to speak the unspoken. Your voice emerges hoarse. We turn here. The words feel sacrilegious as they leave your lips, like admitting defeat to a lover. But they also feel like salvation. You unclip from the summit ridge's rope and lean back, letting gravity pull you downward. The wind shrieks approval and protest as you descend. Each step backward is a step toward life. You reach Camp 4, and Tenzing hands you a flask of hot broth. You gulp it gratefully, feeling warmth blossom in your chest. You press fingers to your mask's straps, setting the flow to recovery mode, enough oxygen to breathe, not enough to summit. It's a trade you accept. As you descend further to the South Col, you sink onto the snow, removing your mask to take unfiltered breaths. The air still stings, but it feels like a birthright again. You sip the last of your hot broth and wrap your down jacket tighter. You close your eyes, exhaling relief and lingering regret in equal measure. On the final descent to Camp 2, you navigate by memory and tenderness. Gentle slopes you carved on ascent, the ladder bridges you crossed with wide eyes in Section 6, and the fixed lines you tested in Section 5. Each landmark feels infused with both challenge and resilience. When your crampons hit Camp 2's icy ground, you kick them off and stagger to the cook tent. You unzip your layers, and the warmth of the tent floods you like an embrace. You sip tea, feeling oxygen hang in your lungs longer than before. You reflect on the summit ridge you sacrificed ambition to preserve life, on the fragile balance between glory and wisdom, and on how Everest's final test wasn't elevation, but prudence. That night you lie in your tent under flickering lamplight, pondering the mountain's lessons. Tomorrow you'll descend further to base camp, but tonight you savor the victory of choice, the clarity that survival itself can be the summit worth reaching. You awaken Camp 2's communal tent to the scent of instant coffee and melting snow. Your legs ache with the memory of summit bid turnaround, but your spirit feels lighter, a paradox you relish. Today's descent to Camp 1 is a pilgrimage through memories etched in ice and fatigue. You zip into your jacket buckle boots and clip into the fixed line, guiding you down the western Quome's gentle slope. Step by deliberate step, you retrace your ascent, passing the rope anchoring 1.5, recalling the prayer flag cord you tied in Section 3, and feeling gratitude for every anchor point that held you. The snow underfoot is softer here, a welcome contrast to the brittle crust higher up. You let gravity ease your descent, guiding you back toward the Khumbu Icefall's fringe. At the bottom of the Lhotse face, you pause on the popcorn field to remove your harness. You flex limbs stiff from altitude and sessions exertion. You sip water and reflect this rotation isn't about pressure points or summit fever. It's about honoring each step, acknowledging how far you've come. You clip your crampons back on and step into the icefall's shadow. The seracs seem subdued now morning light, casting them in gentle pastels instead of menacing silhouettes. You cross the ladder bridges of Section 6 with newfound confidence, footfalls steady gaze forward. Each cracked ice mound yields beneath your axe, but you tap first, no surprises today. Emerging from the ice fall, you let your crampons click snap into your pack. You stretch aching calf muscles and peer at the shifting glaciers, driven now by calm rather than adrenaline. You descend the rocky slope toward Camp 1, the tents clustered like a homecoming. At Camp 1, guides greet you with warm tea and smiles broad as Sherpa prayer wheels. You settle on a low bench and let the warmth seep into frozen joints. Between sips, you rejoin the chatter rotation, stories, weather forecasts, hopeful summit calendars. You laugh over shared blunders, cracked goggles, twisted ankles, iced over water bladders, and feel your bonds deepen. When you're ready, you pack up and head toward base camp, following the familiar trail across the moraine. Prayer flags overhead flutter, like old friends waving goodbye. Each step toward lower altitude feels like shedding a heavy cloak of thin air. As you approach base camp, the colorful tents rise like a welcoming village. Cooks wave you toward the mess tent, where the aroma of dal bhat promises comfort. You enter, and everyone pauses to cheer your return. Somebody who turned back from the summit and lived to tell the tale. You accept a bowl of steaming food with a nod, tearing into rice and lentils with relish. Outside, the late afternoon sun glows golden on Everest's base, and you find a rock to sit on. You gaze up at the mountain's massive feet and recall every test it set before you: altitude, icefall storms, frostbite, and the ultimate choice between summit and survival. You breathe deep, tasting free air for the first time in days, and whisper gratitude to the mountain and your body alike. You leave base camp behind at first light, boots crunching along the moraine trail toward Gorak Shep, but the mountain isn't finished testing you. Halfway between camps, a sudden front you didn't anticipate barrels down the valley, wind shrieking through boulder fields, snow swirling into a curtain so thick it erases every landmark you memorized. Visibility collapses to a few paces. You taste grit on your tongue and realize you're on your own in this frozen storm. Your heart hammers as you scan for shelter, nothing but jagged rocks and snow-laden ridges. The trail vanishes under drifts. You remind yourself of the guide's safety drill: find a windbreak, create a snow cave or huddle behind large boulders. You force your pack from your shoulders and scan the terrain, spotting a rocky overhang half buried in snow. It's not much, but it's something. You hoist your pack and scramble toward the overhang, breath ragged in your lungs. Each inhalation stings frost forming on your balaclava. You press your back into the rock face and wedge your pack between you and the wind, creating a slim buffer. You cup your arms around your chest and press your gloved hands against your armpits, trying to conserve heat. The wind rakes the overhang's entrance, sucking warmth out of your body like a vacuum. You fumble for your insulating shell and jam it around your torso. Every layer you have counts now. You pull your outer hood up, cinch the drawcord tight, and tuck your face deeper into the fabric. The world beyond this narrow alcove is an angry swirl of white noise. Your legs tremble not just from cold, but from adrenaline too. You force yourself to unzip your pack's side pocket and retrieve a pair of hand warmers and an emergency bivy pouch. You tear open the hand warmer and tuck it inside your mittened gloves. The ember like heat blooms slowly, a small oasis in your fingers. You lay the bivy pouch on the icy ground inside the overhang, kneel on it, and slide the edges of the pouch around your legs and torso. The reflective interior catches what little body heat you can generate. You press the bivvy's edge tightly around your neck, sealing out the snow. Inside this makeshift cocoon, you can feel warmth pooling near your core. You exhale and steam puffs against the bivvy's lining. You close your eyes for a moment, letting panic ebb. You whisper to yourself, just breathe. Outside, the storm's roar crescendos. Blasts of snow pummel the rock face, filling the alcove's entrance until a small drift forms at your feet. You press your boot against it, clearing an opening for fresh air, but not so wide that wind can tear inside. You lean your head back against the overhang ceiling, listening to the wind's fury and feeling the rock's cold solidity behind you. Hypothermia's first whispers snake through your body numbness, in your toes, a light-headed haze threatening to cloud your mind. You force circulation by wiggling your toes and tapping heels on the bivvy's floor. Your leg muscles twitch against the cold. You reach into your pocket and pull out the small thermos of hot broth you stashed earlier post descent. You crack it open and pour a few spoonfuls into your mouth. The liquid is tepid, but welcoming, washing down dryness and stoking a small fire in your gut. You know you can't stay here indefinitely. The storm might last an hours or days, but you must move before your core temperature drops further. Yet the overhang offers your best chance to wait out the worst. You measure time by breaths, counting cycles, inhale, hold, exhale. You force mindful stillness, despite the world's madness, beyond the bivy pouch. 20 minutes pass in this suspended bubble. Your breath steadies, and the numbness in your fingers recedes marginally. You squeeze your mittens and feel a faint prick of sensation, evidence that life still pulses through your extremities. You close your eyes and focus on that flicker of warmth, guarding it fiercely. With renewed determination, you assess your next move. The storm shows no sign of relenting, but you spot a faint rhythm in the wind's gusts, short lulls every 5 minutes or so. That's your window. You estimate the overhang lies only 15 meters from a cluster of larger boulders, enough shelter to create a deeper snow cave. You pack away the hand warmers and emerge from the bivy pouch just wide enough to shimmy forward. You step into the gale hood, whipped back by wind, snow stinging your cheeks. You crouch low, arms hugging your sides, and sprint the short distance to the boulder cluster. Each step feels heavy muscles, sluggish in the cold, but you push on adrenaline, lending strength. You press your back against the smooth face of a massive rock and start digging beneath an overhang with your gloved hands scraping snow and ice. Fingers protest, but you press on until you carve out a shallow depression large enough to sit in. You slide into the cavity and resume the bivy pouch. Hand warmers already ablaze in your gloves. You cup your hands over your face, breath fogging the reflective lining, and feel a measure of security return. You're no longer exposed on a moraine, you're enclosed in a frozen womb that shields you from the worst. You tuck your knees to your chest, minimizing surface area and preserving core heat. You close your eyes and whisper, "You can do this." Each breath condenses as mist inside the bivvy, and you watch droplets bead on the lining, a reminder that moisture builds quickly in confined spaces. You wipe the condensation to maintain airflow. From somewhere in the storm, you hear the faint yelp of a yak herd's bells, ghostly echoes from lower camps unreachable in this white abyss. You focus on their distant rhythm, letting the sound anchor you to civilization far below. You sip the last of your broth, savoring each warmth laden sip. Hours slip by as the storm's tempo rises and falls. You count your breaths and feel each inhalation cold, entering warmth, preserved rising like a mantra. The mind numbing cold urges sleep, but you fight off drowsiness, knowing that sleep here would usher deeper hypothermia. Instead, you drum gloved fingers on your chest and mutter, "Stay awake." Late afternoon brings a whisper of change. The wind's roar softens, shifting to a lower frequency. You sense the storm weakening. You test your fingertips, pinkness returns, and the first tendrils of warmth flicker in your toes. The overhang's windbreak still holds snow at bay, and the makeshift snow cave stands firm. You unzip the bivvy's opening and peer out. The swirling snow has thinned to flecks against a dimming sky. The trail ahead is faint, but still visible. You weigh your options. Wait one more storm lull for safety, or press on now and risk the cold again. You decide that momentum is your ally. Each step forward warms your body. You gather your courage, stand, and slip out of the bivvy. You pause on the precipice of the shelter, scanning for the trail's faint trace. You spot a dark line between rocks. You set your hood, test your joints, then step into the open. The wind still gnaws, but your layers and your will protect you. You follow the trace heading east toward the valley floor. Each step is cautious, tap crampons on concealed ice, dig pole tips into snow, move deliberately to maintain warmth. You remind yourself speed and caution in balance. You pass the earlier overhang, now half filled with drift, and feel a surge of pride survival. Here isn't just reaching base camp, it's navigating the mountain's whims when you're alone. After 50 meters, you crest a small ridge and spot a cluster of tents below base camp's edge. Guide voices carry faintly on the wind. Relief blooms so fiercely it stings. You pick up your pace, breath turning to steam in your chest, and descend towards safety. When you reach base camp proper, you stumble into the mess tent, boots rattling gravel, and collapse onto a bench. Fellow climbers rush to warm you with blankets and tea. You sip greedily, feeling warmth flood back. You press your numb fingers against a hot mug, watching color return like dawn's first light. You settle into a seat by the stove, blanket piled around your shoulders, and exhale a shaky laugh. You survived the storm's heart and fought off hypothermia's claws. You sip tea again, tasting salt and soot and triumph. The mountain's final whisper today wasn't about summits or setbacks. It was about enduring its fiercest trial and emerging alive. Rescue after the abyss unfolds like a slow motion sunrise. First, you hear it muffled voices carried on a wind that's finally lost its razor edge. At first, you think it's the mountain playing tricks, ominous, echoing murmurs from Sirach shattered depths. But then the calls sharpen into your name, urgent and alive. You poke your head from beneath the bivy pouch at the snow cave's mouth and squint into a clearing sky. Figures in neon down jackets emerge through the lingering flurries, fixed lines, and ice picks in hand. Are you okay? Can you stand? One voice, clear as a prayer bell, asks from just beyond the boulder barrier. You swallow throat tight and force your legs beneath you. Every muscle protests as if you've just run a marathon in clouds, but you'll yourself upright. You feel the warmth of rescue before you even reach for it, an invisible hand guiding you to hope. The lead rescuer strides forward, Pima, a veteran Sherpa, known for his unflappable calm. He extends a bulky gloved hand, and you grasp it with surprising strength. You stumble forward, boots crunching on the newly hardened snow. He guides you around the boulder cluster where the overhang's entrance gapes. You did well, he tells you, voice soft but firm. We heard your signal flare and followed your tracks. You flush at the reminder of that small flare, your last resort. You hadn't expected it to work, but in the whiteout's throes, you fumbled a flare pistol from your pack and fired once into the sky. You thought it lost in the storm, but someone saw it. Now, here are the rescuers, whose presence feels almost miraculous in this high altitude wilderness. Pima supports your weight as you walk toward a deeper cave he's dug beneath a rocky outcrop. Inside, two other Sherpas ignite a small portable burner, sending a plume of warmth and stinging kerosene scent into the alcove. They hand you a hot towel to press against your cheeks and a stainless steel mug brimming with broth that smells like home. You cradle the mug, pressing it to your chest as if it were a lifeline. Each sip bathes you in comfort. They check your vitals, pulse, saturation temperature, speaking in Nepali accented English that feels like a safety net. You respond with hoarse nods, your voice raw from cold and fatigue. Pima unwraps a foil sleeping bag from his pack, enveloping you in its metallic crinkle. The reflective layer traps your body heat, and you become a glowing ember against the cave wall. Outside, the storm's remnants drift in lazy spirals. The rescuers work efficiently. One clears a pathway back toward base camp. Another tests a portable radio to summon a stretch of red and white rope for hoisting. You lean against the warmed rock mind, fogged between gratitude and disbelief. Rescue in this harsh cathedral of ice feels unreal, as though you're part of a dream where kindness arrives on cramponed feet. After 20 minutes, Pima signals it's time to move. You step outside and gasp at the expanse. The valley is streaked with wind-polished drifts, the sky a pale canvas streaked with rose and gold. You clip into fixed ropes, and the group guides you with a gentle but firm hand down the familiar descent to Camp 2. Each step feels buoyant, each breath lighter than the day before. At Camp 2's entrance, guides and climbers gather, watching the procession of brightly clothed rescuers and one ragged but alive climber. You feel their collective exhale as you enter the cook tent, where voices hush and then burst into relieved greetings. Someone presses a fresh mug of tea into your hands. Someone else drapes a warm blanket across your shoulders. You lift the teacup in a shaky toast, words catching in your chest, thank you. Later, in the quiet of your tent, you sink onto your cot muscles, finally letting go of their tension. You trace the reflective surface of your rescue bivvy and journal Section 13 Rescue After Storm. Flare pistol call saved me. Pima and team found me. Warm broth and foil bag restored hope. You close your notebook and let exhaustion overtake you, comforted by the knowledge that human compassion can pierce even Everest's fiercest loneliness. You awaken in the cook tent of Camp 2 to murmurs of relief and the hiss of melting snow. Staring at the frost patterns on the tent wall, you marvel at how quickly the mountain's fury can recede into gentle warmth. Today's plan: rest and reflect on the ridge above a vantage point from which you can replay the mountain's lessons etched in each contour. You slip into fresh base layers, grateful for the tangible softness against your skin. Frostbite's memory still tingles in your fingertips, but with warmth restored, you feel the bones of your hands reknit with sensation. You slip on your boots and step outside, stepping onto snow warmed by midday sun. You breathe deep, tasting calm air for the first time in days. You navigate the snow slope, leading to a ridge that overlooks the western comb. Every step feels more deliberate, less fraught with survival's urgency. You recall the near fall on a narrow ledge, ice avalanches, and the blizzard's wrath, each memory, a piece of your transformed self. You pause at a prayer flagged marker, a weathered pole still draped in color despite storm scoured threads. You reach out and touch a flag, its fabric stiff but courageous. It's a symbol of persistence, fluttering prayers against ice and wind. Ahead, the ridge slopes upward a gentle incline, compared to the Lhotse face's steep demands. You follow fixed lines that snag on snowdrifts, a path worn by climbers seeking perspective as much as safety. You notice how the ridge's profile shifts under changing light crests that once looked menacing now appear sculptural, carved by wind's artistry. You sense the mountain's duality, capable of terror and grace in equal measure. Reaching a high point, you stop and gaze across the expanse. The western Coombs ice bowl stretches like a frozen amphitheater ringed by towering peaks. Nuptse to the west, Lhotse to the south, and your quarry Everest to the north. The summit ridge's silhouette is softened by distance, its jagged teeth less threatening when framed by calm skies. Yet in your mind, you replay the final push's gravity, the knife-edge ridge, the flow of oxygen dwindling in your mask the moment you chose life over summit. You settle onto a pocket of snow warmed by sun and close your eyes. You breathe deep, letting the mountain's silence fill the space between your thoughts. You feel the slow throb of your heart, each beat a tribute to survival and choice. You open your journal and trace a line under Section 14 Reflections from the ridge. You write in neat, unhurried script. From here, every trial appears smaller, framed by perspective. The mountain's lessons echo humility, resilience, the power of momentary choices. You pause your writing and look at the half burned flare cartridge you tucked into your pack after Section 13. It rests next to your pen, a reminder that sometimes a small signal can summon salvation. You tuck both into your journal's back pocket, deciding they belong in your story's epilogue rather than the main chapters. Rising, you draw several prayer flag cords from your pack. You tie one to a stake driven into the ridge's crest, letting its red, yellow, green, blue, and white banners unfurl in a gentle breeze. You whisper, "For every lost flame, this flag will carry hope." The colors dance across the ice, bright and impermanent against eternity. You linger as the sun begins its descent, painting peaks in pastel rosy light. The mountain's curves soften into ridges of lavender and cream. You close your eyes and tilt your face toward the sky, the cold air now a balm rather than a burden. You feel gratitude, not only for life preserved, but for insight gained that Everest isn't conquered by planting flags on summits, but by sowing wisdom in the heart. When you finally rise, the ridge feels less like a boundary and more like a bridge between what was and what will be. You retrace your steps down to Camp 2 each footfall, carrying calm resolve. The fixed lines feel secure beneath your gloved hands, the crampon points sure against the slope. You emerge back into the cook tent, greeted by nodded smiles and mugs of hot tea. You accept a cup and sit by the lantern's glow, savoring the warmth on your fingertips. You watch steam ripple upward, tracing patterns in the curtained light. You sip slowly, letting the mountain's reflections steep into your consciousness. In this moment of quiet camaraderie, you realize you've become part of something larger, a lineage of climbers who learned that survival and humility can be as fulfilling as triumph. You close your eyes on the cocoon of the cook tent, breathing slow, steady breaths. You envision the ridge one last time, its prayer flags, its sweeping views, its echoes of every section's trials. You sense your story threading through those peaks, grounded in choices that defined your climb more than any summit would have. You descend to base camp at sunrise, the trail now familiar under your boots' worn soles. Your pack feels lighter, not just from discarded gear, but from the burden of unanswered ambition. As you approach the riotous colors of tents nestled against the Khumbu Glacier, you sense a return not to where you began, but to who you'll become. Base camp greets you with the aroma of burning yak dung fires and the clatter of cooking pots. You enter the mess tent, its benches crowded with climbers, sipping tea and sharing post-rotation tales. You pause at the entrance, taking in the warmth, laughter, and the sight of prayer flags fluttering in unison. This is home, however transient, after a journey that reached greater heights of the spirit than altitude. You remove your boots outside and step into stockinged feet, grounding yourself on the rocky ground. You greet faces you met in Section 3 Mark with his wide grin, Sophia with her knowing nod, and Dawa, whose calm vigilance kept you alive. Each friend offers embraces and exclamations, however small, they eclipse any summit cheer you imagined. Sitting with your bowl of dal bhat, you reflect on your body's transformation lungs that once rasped at 5,000 meters, now savor free breaths at base camp's elevation. Legs that trembled on thin ropes now feel steady on gravel. Fingers that numb at frost's first kiss now relish the warmth of metal spoon and ceramic mug. You lift the bowl in a modest toast to life resilience and the mountain's indelible lessons. Later, you wander to Everest's base and lay a small wreath bright wildflowers from lower altitudes tied with ribbon. You kneel on the moraine, placing each bloom with intention, one for every test you endured, one for every life that never returned, and one for each lesson that reshaped you. You step back and watch the flowers dance in the breeze, fragile gifts to a timeless giant. As you walk away, you hear the low rumble of ice moving in the distance, a reminder that the mountain lives beyond your story. Yet you carry Everest within you in the steady rhythm of your breath, the calm confidence in uncertain moments, and the humility to know the summit you reached wasn't on its crown, but in choosing life over ambition. You return to the mess tent for one last cup of tea. The guide hands it to you without words. You simply nod and accept. You hold the mug to your chest, feeling its warmth spread through layers of clothing and memory. Around you, climbers plan next rotations, gear shipments, and future expeditions. You smile, knowing your path now diverges. You carry home experiences that no peak can top. You write your final journal entry at base camp's makeshift table. Return home and transformation. Survival yields wisdom. Everest taught me humility, resilience, and the power of choice. The greatest summit is living to share the lesson. You close the book and tuck it into your pack, ready for a journey that leads far beyond these mountains. Now it's time to slow. Your breaths stretch longer, each inhalation drawn out as though savoring the first notes of a favorite melody. The wind's howl becomes a distant lullaby, and the weight of nylon tents and crampons lifts from your heart. In the quiet moments between thoughts, you hear a soft hum, your own pulse steady and sure, guiding you back to warmth and rest. Remember every gust of wind, every flake of snow, and every breath you fought to claim now fade into gentle memories. Let your mind drift across the ice fields you crossed, but soften the edges. Imagine the flowing prayer flags, the golden sunrise painting peaks in pastel lanes. Feel the warmth of tea in your hands, the camaraderie of voices offering kindness in the cold. Allow your chest to rise and fall with unhurried ease. Each exhale releases tension like melting ice dripping from eaves. Each inhale invites calm, stitching warmth into your lungs and bones. In this moment, you're beyond fixing ropes, beyond measuring oxygen, beyond testing resolve. You're simply you safe, whole, and alive. As the final echoes of Everest's ports of call recede, let a gentle peace settle. Your journey's end isn't a dramatic summit, but a quiet return to self-carrying lessons etched in frost and fire. Tonight rest with the knowledge that you dared greatly listen deeply and chose life's gentler path over glory's thin air. Now curl beneath blankets like a climber reclaiming shelter after a storm. Let every tremor of fatigue lull you toward sleep. You'll dream of peaks and prayer flags, but you'll wake grounded, your spirit balanced, your heart steady, and your soul cradled by the mountain's quiet majesty.